What's going on, folks? Our good friend Mr. Mark Mancini has too many important things to do, so we are on our own tonight. And normally we'd be upset about that, but the reality is it's the AFC East. So it's almost like a blessing in disguise that we have a Lone Star division by division deal because it is the AFC East. If you are listening as a fan of the AFC East, please write us and we will respond to you in kind. You can find us at any time at knuckleheadpods@gmail.com, at knuckpods, KNU knuckpods on Facebook or Twitter. My Twitter account is actually rocking and rolling, and I meshed that in with our Twitter account, which is at KNUCKS or KNUCKPODS, Knuckpods, which is the same thing. You can find us on Facebook. And Mr. Mancini, Mr. Hirsch, and Baltimore Blaine have some great stuff. You can even see Mr. Hirsch on the same car that he goes out in every time he sees his buddy, which is a Cheesehead Mobile, which I doubt that they roll down to Chicago very often because I imagine that would get pelted with some type of cheese or something. Uh, I'm trying to stoke a little bit of rivalry a little bit because of the fact that football season's here. Football season's here. This is the last week where there will not be a game. Next week we have the Hall of Fame game, and after that we have football all the way through the Super Bowl next February. So happy. I know that all my guys are happy, so why don't I introduce them? We'll start with you, Mr. Baltimore Blaine, because you always seem to take the back seat. What's going on with you, Mr. Baltimore Blaine, and how are you doing today?
I am fine. I am in Los Angeles, suffering through triple-digit temperatures right now. Vegas, you got nothing on us. But staying cool. Got my slush drink, and ready to rock and roll.
And Mr. Hirsch, what's going on with you? How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine. The weather's good here. I understand half the country's burning up, but we're in the 70s and 80s here. Very nice. And I was not out in a Cheesehead Mobile. It's known as, it's got no cheese on it. It's got no cheese hat in it. It's known as the Green Bay Packard, an all original 1950 Packard, painted in the best colors in the world, green and gold, and we go out cruising in that, and we love it.
So an interesting fact that's interesting only to me, honestly, is I'm down here visiting in Colombia, and the grocery store near my house has, Colombia has some great cheese and stuff, some simple stuff because the climate's perfect for dairy cows. But there is a Wisconsin cheese company that somehow struck a deal with a Colombian importer, and I buy blocks of all the Wisconsin stuff, and I hoard it because it's just so much better for everything I cook, everything I do. So God bless Wisconsin for that. The comforts of home, the comforts of home. So
nothing like a good sharp cheddar.
Bordella sharp cheddar in English with a little cow face on it. Totally Wisconsin. And it makes my whole world happy. I did a broccoli mac and cheese with some Wisconsin sharp cheddar today. So once again, the comforts of home. So folks, this is going to be a bit of a shorter show after this. Hopefully, if you actually found this show, we love you, and we want you guys to support us, and we'll support you. Write us, comment on us, give us likes, give us all the love you can, and we will definitely support you as far as questions and things you want answered. Next week we start our full on schedule as far as going division by division. So the fact that there's a little bit of a hiccup schedule wise this week in the AFC East is not the biggest deal in the world. So let's start with the Bills. And I really don't have a lot to say. You guys who listen to our show know that I said that the quarterback from Wyoming that they pulled into that horrible, horrible position. And by the way, Buffalo fans, if he starts this year, he will be ruined. It's not a good situation. He took away all of his receivers, and now the only offensive weapon he might have is possibly looking at jail time and suspension. There's nothing positive that can happen for this guy. This guy went to junior college right near where I went to, high school, and he has never been a quarterback that has done anything besides splash plays. He only has so numbers, but besides the fact that he can throw the ball far, to me. I know I'm in the minority in this. I don't think he should have been a first round quarterback at all. And you get rid of Tyrod Taylor, and you get rid of a bunch of the receivers. I don't understand how Buffalo even has a chance. So we'll go from Baltimore Blaine to Mr. Mark Hirsch. Blaine, tell me something that I'm missing here, because besides that, I think this is the worst team in the NFL.
Just a minute, Chris. Aren't you going to tell us that quarterback's name after you talk to him for 5 minutes? We know he's from Wyoming, but
Give his name, Chris. Give his name.
Wyoming Joe.
All righty then.
Well, I got some plus news.
Yeah, we don't have any guests, so I gotta pick on somebody. Sorry about that, Chris.
Are you guys being serious? Do you not have the name?
You did not tell the name. You said that quarterback from Wyoming, and I think our listeners, some of them may know it, but
All right,
yeah, you're gonna tease it out.
Josh Allen, for those of you who don't know, it's the only quarterback out of Wyoming since the last bust from Wyoming. But yeah, Josh Allen.
Well, a little good news is that he's not in jail yet. LeSean McCoy will be in camp on time without any hindrance from the NFL so far. So, you think it's going to be a little bit of a distraction?
Is that like Manafort's not? Never mind. I'm sorry.
Okay, stop it.
No politics.
So what we have here is, like you said, they let AJ. They let Tyrod Taylor go. Brought in AJ McCarron, which AJ is like, I'm going to get the start somewhere. Buffalo. Well, here we are, and as you said, this is a rebuild. I don't know what they're calling it, but it's a rebuild. And you have Josh Allen, who was taken first round, number 7. He's going to be learning. I expect him to be on the field probably if not at the beginning of the season, mid-season, because this team is a wreck. And even if they had kept everyone, the management of after what happened with Tyrod Taylor and almost sabotaging themselves out of the playoffs, they barely made the playoffs because they knocked themselves out of the playoff position because they made a bonehead decision to sit a quarterback that was doing nothing wrong, and all he was doing was winning. So I can tell you, Tyrod Taylor's glad to be gone. I'm sure, even if it is to Cleveland. But there's nothing I can really. There's nothing I really have positive about what I'm seeing here with Buffalo. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hirsch.
Thank you, Blaine. Well, before I get started, I'm going to make my prediction really fast. The standings in the AFC East will be Patriots, Jets, Dolphins, Bills, in that order. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You took the mystery out of it.
Well, I could be wrong. There's a first time for everything. Oh, hold it. I was wrong last year when I said the Saints weren't going to do much. All right. Anyway, as far as the Bills, I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. The Bills, I think everyone else in this division has made some improvements, except for the Bills. They got no O-line. They got a rookie quarterback. I think they'd be smart to sit him for a good long time. But at the same time, he'll never get up to speed if he doesn't play. Part of the deal with being a new quarterback just out of college is learning how to go through your reads quickly and get the ball out and all that kind of stuff. And you don't get that by watching. That's something you need with total experience. But it's not looking good for the Bills. That whole Tyrod Taylor thing, that was last year. This is this year. And they're worse than they were last year. They got lucky. They got into the wild card last year, believe it or not. And that was Tyrod Taylor. They stole some games on their way to that wild card berth that they picked up. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. And I think they're going to be lucky to win 3 or 4 games.
They do have a receiver or two that might do some simple things, but I mean, this is one of my themes as far as all of our reviews of division is going to be that the AFC is so much worse than the NFC. And this is the worst team in the AFC. This could honestly be, I know that people don't think about this besides the Browns, but this could honestly be a winless team this year. They do have some pieces, but it seems like they trade away or give away every piece that they have. And if something happens where you lose LaShawn McCoy for a period of time, I don't understand what chance they have in him. I know that it's too bad that Mr. Mancini is not on the show because I'd love to hear him talk about A.J. McCarron. He's a great quarterback. The Bengals didn't use him. It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter in this case. So I actually have a little bit of the Jets that I want to talk about.
Well, but before you go there, Chris, let's look at real quick. Let's look at the schedule.
Okay.
They open in Baltimore, then they host the Chargers.
Easy win.
Minnesota, they're at Minnesota, they're at Green Bay, then they host Tennessee, they're at Houston.
Yeah.
Their break it comes in week 7 with Indianapolis.
Yeah,
they're at Indianapolis. I mean,
and the Patriots twice.
Yeah, then the Patriots. Oh my gosh. It's going to be hard getting to that week 11 bye.
Yeah, well, at least they got a bye. That's 1 week they won't lose, right?
I honestly would not be surprised if they go 0-0.
It could easily happen.
It really could. And if you go 0 in what I think all of us would agree is the worst division in football, that's something to be said.
Yeah.
So I want to leave the Jets for just a little bit.
No, the Buffalo Bills.
No, the Buffalo Bills. I said I want to leave the Jets. I want to pass on the Jets. I want to speak about the Patriots at the end. I want to go to Miami. Because Miami is no. You're okay. Maybe I misspoke, but Miami to me is they could be really bad, but they have a lot of talent. But they just keep missing, and they're almost to the point. And so I'm gonna give a hot take, and I'll let Mr. Hirsch go first, and then you, Blaine. Tell me if I'm completely out of line on this, but is this the new Browns? Because they keep missing, and the only real Hard Knocks season where you rooted against the coaching staff was the Miami Dolphins one. So I mean, is this really can they just are these the Keystone Cops? Are these the Browns of the next 10 years? Because it seems to me they can't buy a win, and now they've given away their 2 best players. So explain to me how it gets better. I only have explanations how it gets worse, which I'll do when it comes back to me. I want to go to you, Mr. Hirsch. What does your research on Miami tell you, and is there any positivity to your research?
Well, I guess the thing that you could say that might be good about the Dolphins is the return of Ryan Tannehill. But then you have to keep in mind that in the last couple seasons, he's missed over 20 games with injuries. And what good is he going to do them? Or is he going to do them any good? We're going to have to see how that turns out. He wasn't a bad quarterback when he was playing well. He wasn't a great quarterback either. But I think that makes a difference on a team who your quarterback is. And so that might be a bright spot for them if he could get back to the form that he had before he started suffering all these injuries.
It's just a little bit of a difference, no, Mr. Blaine? What do you think? 'Cause I think Mr. Hirsch might have been correct in thinking that your quarterback might have a small effect on how your season turns out.
Well, I agree with Mr. Hirsch. That is a bright spot for them because we saw what happened with the with the experiment last year of Cutler. Boy. No, but they've added some things. They've added Albert Wilson, wide receiver from the Chiefs, was with the Chiefs last year. He signed a 3-year deal, which is actually probably going to be a 2-year deal. Wide receiver Danny Amendola on a 2-year deal. They added a guard, Josh Sitton, who's a 4-time Pro Bowler. And running back Frank Gore, the ageless wonder, who's still somehow, after what is going into his 10th? No, his 15th year or something like that. This guy is still producing. So, he's going into his 14th season. And then you got a backup there, a solid backup in Brock Osweiler. So they did lose some pieces, but they still have some pieces. So I don't see them doing any worse than last year. Maybe even a tad better.
Didn't Danny Amendola get a couple game suspension for PEDs?
No, that was I think you're thinking of Edelman.
That's the other little white guy that played in New England.
See, I can't keep those Patriots straight.
We're not a political or a race-based deal, but it makes me crack up when every single white receiver, not every single, I'm going to take that back. So you had Adam. No. I'm not stepping on any side, but genes make you play a certain way kind of deal. But Adam Thielen was one of the most crisp running as far as routes were concerned. One of the lowest drop rates, but they only on the top 100 they only compare him to Amendola and some other people. So I thought that's funny. So the fact that Amendola and Edelman and all these other guys are the same players is totally off kilter. So something I will bring up again, this is AFC East, is that for those of you who do listen to this show who are in fantasy, I'm going to give you guys a hot take. For the first 4 to 6 games, Jordan Matthews playing in the slot in New England that no one in the world is talking about is going to catch 7 to 8 passes on average a game for the first 4 games while Edelman's out. And he's going to have a career year in New England this year. And that is because he is exactly the player that New England wants, New England has, and many other players going back to Branch in the Belichick offense. And it is the perfect player, the perfect replacement on the short term for Edelman. And I think it's kind of one of those sneaky plays that no one's talking about. Drop the mic. Boom.
Okay.
But, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. But when we're talking about Miami, Amendola and a few other people just, it's a new era where people want to attack the Patriots. And, listening to Willie McGinnis, those of you who haven't heard, there's a great podcast called The Dave Damashek Show. It's a little bit funny. He writes for Adam Kroll and a few other people. He had a podcast this week with Willie McGinnis and Antonio Brown. And Willie is a full-on old school Belichick lover because of the fact they won Super Bowls together. Amendola has had some love and some hardships and some anger, and I don't know, but I don't understand why he goes to Miami and just wants to talk some smack. But if you've heard Amendola, he said it's like being in the principal's office, not on a football team, and he wants to talk all the smack he does. I'll put the over under at 3.5 to 4 games that he's fully healthy for the season. And he's going to play on the Dolphins. So I think it's kind of just disrespectful of how people in this era with social media get to kind of just turn on one of the almost Lombardi-esque. You can go ahead and check me on that, Mr. Hirsch. Coaches that we've had in the league. I mean, why don't we talk about that real quick?
Hold up, Chris. Let me ask you. Why do you think he's not going to be a full season guy?
Because he never has been.
Well, he had 15 games.
He's never played more than. I would check that. 15 games starting, maybe.
That's according to Roto-World.
Okay, so 15 games last year he played. So last year definitely he was one of his healthier years. But I would definitely say that on average he's played 9 to 12 games a year for his whole career.
Well, I want to. You know what? They're gonna need to be healthy on the offense because they're going to get shredded in the secondary because their cornerback position. Their corner position is really troublesome. And Bobby McCain just signed an extension, but that's a slot corner. They don't have anybody to go. They haven't decided who's going to be on the other side of Howard.
So here's I don't mean to cut you off, Blaine. So real quickly,
I cut you off.
Then we'll go. No problem. I'm going to go to you and then Mr. Hirsch because this is something we're going to look at on every team as we do these division by division breakdowns. So on basic, minus plus, simple sum totals, did they add more than they let go this year? So if you look at, I know you guys are well versed on each team. So looking at what they gave away, Sue, what's the guy they gave away to the Browns?
The receiver.
Yeah. So you look at those. I mean, did they give away more? And does Amendola make up for that, or are they, plus some gain? That's what I'm looking for. Plus some gain. Are they looking at minus or plus? Why don't you give your opinion, and then we'll give Mr. Hirsch a chance to chime in, and then we'll go to the Jets.
Well, I think they, like I said, I think they lost some pieces, but then they picked up some pieces. Like I said, Frank Gore is still producing, so they'll have a ground game. They did pick up Albert Wilson. They picked up Albert Wilson, and they have Danny Amendola. I think that I really think that they've improved, especially with Tannehill. Whatever they can get out of Tannehill coming back. I'm not a big fan of Tannehill's, and I've said that before in the shows. Our old buddy VJ, and I have debated that. But I like him better than Cutler. And I think that they're going to be okay. They're not. I don't know if they're. I'm not going to pick them to make the playoffs, not by a long shot. But because if that secondary if they don't do something about the secondary, and there's still time that they can add pieces. They got Adam Pac-Man Jones out there, who's 150 years old. Cromartie is still out there, who was out there because he refused to take a pay cut. And after a down season, but they've got some, and let's not forget the cap. I mean, not the cap, but the cuts that are going to happen out of training camp. So they have a chance to add some pieces still going forward. It's just that right now it's just scary.
Well, I think I stated earlier that I think that all of the teams in the AFC East, except for the Bills, have made some improvements, and that goes for Miami as well. And I think an important piece for them has got to be Josh Sitton, because one of the factors for Ryan Tannehill is going to be able to have some protection. And Josh Sitton is a Pro Bowl offensive lineman. I don't know why he's bouncing around from team to team. I guess he's getting a little old, but hasn't been out with injuries the past couple seasons, and I think he can do a good job and help the offense. Give Ryan Tannehill some time to find his targets and also to help with the running game. So I think the Dolphins have improved over last year.
And they've added some pieces to the tight end position too. That might strengthen that a little bit. So that'll give Tannehill some additional weapons. Yeah,
but you lose Jarvis Landry, you lose Ndamukong Suh. Who knows? There's a series of articles written at NFL.com by Adam Rank, which it's kind of funny to a point because you can, when you read it, if you read all 32 of them, you can kind of see where at certain points, his editor said, okay, we're going to ask you to write articles on all 32 teams on what they need to do to make the playoffs. So you have to make believe that there's a chance that all 32 teams make the playoffs, and this is what they have to do. And when you get down to certain teams, it's kind of funny where he's obviously kind of tongue-in-cheek saying, like, this is my job, but I don't really believe this. I think Dolphins is one of those. It all depends on Tannehill, I guess. Frank Gore, don't be surprised if Frank Gore comes out and just absolutely kills it. So, but I think that's enough time on the Bills and the Dolphins. So here's a team, and don't worry, folks. Those few of you who listen to this during the season, we're gonna get Captain Jet on whether we like it or not, because we do like it because he's our buddy. But he's on ready to talk about the Jets every single week. I think the Jets are going to surprise some people. It has nothing to do with their quarterback. It has nothing to do with anything. It has to do with their coach finally getting the chance to get that defensive team together and really play some defense. I really like their receiving core. Robbie Anderson getting acquitted from all of his crimes, having Onunye and the former Seahawk Javon Curse. They call him Chop Chop, the other white meat, back in the Seahawk days, along with the stout defensive line. Probably what I think should have been the defensive rookie of the year as safety. With the moves they made this year in the drafts and in free agency, I think that team looks like the kind of team that could take 1 out of 2 from the Pats and go 7-9. I think they look like the surprise, and I think they're going to mash the Dolphins and the Bills. You have situations where at quarterback where you have a nice, safe place for their rookie Darnold to not start if he doesn't need to, which is one of the things why, as I've talked to Blaine about, we've mentioned multiple shows, which is why I think that the kid from Louisville has a better chance to have success in the future, because I don't think he starts this year. Darnold might start this year, but I think they have a lot of options where he doesn't have to. They have a little bit of running game, but I think they have a good defense. They can keep them in games. They have a great defensive coach. The fact that the front office decided to stay with him, even though he was sick, almost mortally sick at points last year, and they kept him, I think, is a great decision. And the fact that I like them for backing up their players and paying all the fines for any type of fines they might incur from the whole absolutely ridiculous anthem policy. I think that makes me a little bit of a Jets fan this year. So we'll go to you, Mr. Hirsch. What do you think on the football side? I know you kind of feel strongly on how stupid the anthem policy is.
Well, I've long ago exhausted any interest in the anthem policy, except for the fact that I don't agree with the ownership making unilateral decisions that affects the players without having the players at the table, and I guess that's going to be addressed now. So enough said about that. In terms of the Jets, I'd like to contrast them with the Bills. as the Jets being a team that is doing the rebuilding thing right, and the Bills being a team that's not doing it right at all. I remember last year, even Captain Jet was thinking that the Jets would be lucky to win 3 games, and they ended up winning 5. Now, Chris, you're coming out and saying they might win 7. Is that what I heard? I think you're a little more optimistic than a lot of other commentators that are thinking they might win 4 or 5. But I don't think it would surprise me at all to see the Jets get more than 5 games this year. I think that they are doing a good job of rebuilding. I think they've got a foundation going, and I think they're going to be a force to reckon with, if not in the 2018 season, moving on into the future.
I think Blaine, are you there? You have a little tech problems? All right, so I think Blaine's having a little tech problem. So I want to answer what you asked. Excuse me. And thank you for asking for the clarification, because what I said is at the top end, definitely they could do 7 and take 1 from the Pats. And they would be the team that I think would be the most likely to take 1 from the Pats. Am I going to go to Vegas and bet on them going 7 and 9 and taking it? No. But I think what you're saying is exactly right. And I think that's an excellent point, Mr. Hirsch, is the fact that they went through some changes, and I think that head coach was saddled with some draft picks and some salary issues and some bad front office decisions that he had to kind of wade through to get there. So I think you're 100% right in the fact that they're rebuilding correctly. They have high-end picks that are building blocks and cornerstones to a team that needs to move forward. And the one piece that they are missing, which they're not going to be able to fill this year unless, who knows, but unless Sam Darnold comes out and absolutely kills it, which I don't think any quarterback, by the way, and I've been on the record saying this, I don't think any of the quarterbacks this year should be starting right away. I think that you are 100% right, is that they are rebuilding the correct way. They have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. They have some great linebackers. They have some good people on defense. They have a stout and reliable and how do I put this? They have a wide receiver core that fits. They have someone that can take the top off. They have multiple people that can play in between. They have people that can make the tough catches. They have some veterans. They have some young guys. They have a lot of pieces. They're not 7 is the high end for them, in my opinion. Whatever you take from that, but I think that they do actually have the ability to take 7 games. I mean, remember 2 years ago when everyone said that they were not going to win a single game, and they ended up surprising the world with just a few. Last year, they were supposed to win almost nothing, and they won a few games. So I think that you actually nailed that right on the head. I want to give you props on that, Mr. Hirsch, because the fact that if you want to contrast the teams between, and I'll even add Miami into it, because Miami's had the ability and the money to build for the last 3 to 4 years. And if they would have done what New York Jets are doing now, they would be in a much better place. So I think that's a great, great point. Baltimore Blaine, are you back with us?
I am back with you.
Yeah, so why don't you jump in on New York, because I think it's a topic that we all agree on, unless you see something we don't see.
Well, the thing is about the Jets is that they were rebuilding last year, and they surprised some people with some wins. They actually were very competitive. I expect them to build on that. Sam Darnold being an addition to the team. It's interesting what they're going to do with. I hear Teddy Bridgewater is actually, they're looking at him as possible trade material. He's been looking good in many camps. And it appears that the whole injury thing and the being afraid to get hit thing is probably behind him now. So I don't expect him to be breaking camp with them. Sam Darnold did not report with the rookies because his deal is not done yet, but they expect that to be done any time now. So yeah, I think the Jets are going to be okay. I think they're going to. I'm looking at them if as it looks now to be number two in that division again. They'll be building on what they did last year. I'm not sure if they're going to make the postseason though. I don't really see but one team coming out of that division for the postseason.
Well, I agree with you, Blaine. I think there's going to be plenty of competition coming out of the other divisions for the wild card. And I think it's a foregone conclusion that the Patriots are going to come in first in this division.
So really quickly, in just a couple of sentences, we'll go back to you, Mr. Hurst, and then to Blaine. Do you think that if the Patriots would have been in, let's say, the AFC East in the early 2000s or the NFC West in the mid 2000s or any other division, that they would have the success that they had?
Well, they are in the AFC East. But it's hard to say. I mean, the Patriots have been a lot stronger historically than I think they are now. And it certainly hasn't hurt them to be in one of the weakest divisions in the NFL. I think it's a foregone conclusion, as I said before, that they're going to come at the top of this division. They've got 5 or 6 wins easy just in their division matchups. I mean, come on. They're going against the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. And it would surprise me a little if the Jets would upset them in one of the 2 games that they're going to play with them. Not extremely surprising, but I don't think it would be surprising either if it didn't happen. I think the Patriots have a strong team, but yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I think that if the Patriots were in the NFC, there'd be a lot more of a dogfight for them. I mean, they've been cruising on the gravy train with first-round buys coming out of division champions in the AFC East and taking the AFC throughout the playoffs. I think that's had to have been a big assist to them in getting into the Super Bowl. And once you get into the last game, anything can happen. It's not over till the fat lady sings. I think that the Patriots proved that when they came up against Atlanta and were so far behind coming into the last quarter. So, yeah, I think it would have been a lot tougher of a slog for them if they were in some of the other more competitive divisions, like maybe the NFC South or the NFC North.
Yeah, I don't think they would have the success that they have, or that they've that their history shows if they were in one of these other divisions. Now they still be successful. They still be a force. But Mark made all my arguments right there. Weak division. They've been the dominant team in that division for so long. Easy wins for them in that division. So it's if they were in like the NFC East, that would be a whole different circumstance. It would be they wouldn't have that success. Even even in the AFC North, they would have to play a different type of football for one. More physical. They have to build a more physical team to be able to survive in that division.
I think the three of us being homers for teams that have been very important in the playoff picture over the last 10 to 15 years. Would love to have played 6 games against the Dolphins, Bills, and Jets every single season. At the same time, Pats fans, don't worry. I'm not taking all the love away, because what you guys have done is unprecedented in the era of the salary cap. And you can only play the teams that are in your division. But at the same time, it's kind of ridiculously lopsided. But that's life. What are you gonna do? You guys still won the Super Bowls. You still won the playoff games when it counted, and there's nothing else that can be said. I'm sorry, Mr. Hirschman.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to say that they wouldn't have been successful. I guess what I really meant was that they would have had to work a lot harder for it. Yeah. They would have had to scrap their way through a lot of tough games, to get into the playoffs and then fight their way through that with much tougher teams.
More injuries.
Injuries is the big one for me.
Well, I think it's just a question of how hard they would have to work. And I alluded to that earlier when I said they just cruise to a first round bye all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought Mr. Hurst that you were probably the most the most diplomatic on the subject. I think what Blaine and I are specifically talking about is, look at when the Niners went to the NFC Championship game 3 years in a row, and the Seahawks and the Niners, and you had the Rams and Arizona, and beating the heads against each other, like tons of injuries. Blaine with the Steelers and the Ravens and all that beating up. You guys with the Vikings and the different people that you guys played, and the Bears. Even though the Bears were bad, you guys had tough games in the cold with rivalry. I think there's just something to be said about the physicality that came in the NFC, especially with our three teams in that time, whereas the Patriots got to kind of slide through. It's one of those things. It's neither here nor there, but it's kind of one of those wah deals.
Well, I'm
but
just hating.
Time, it's sorry. Go ahead, Blake.
I'm just hating.
Yeah, there's some validity. There's some validity to it. It's like saying I showed up late to a time test because of traffic. If I would have showed up on time, then there wouldn't have been traffic. Then I would have got the same score as you. Well, you know what? You didn't, and I live next to the testing place, and you had to drive. So I'll tell you.
Well, I don't want to get it twisted. They still got arguably the best coach, at least in this era of football.
In American sports history.
The most prolific quarterback and maybe the greatest of all time. So they would still have the success. They have not and like Mr. Hurst said, they would have to earn it. They would have to work for it harder. They would. I'm not saying that they would have as many rings. I think it would be harder to get those rings. And again, when you're playing, it's tougher competition than those teams that they're playing, and it's just what it is. You made a good point, Chris. That they don't make the schedule. They didn't make the division. They didn't make they didn't make up those other teams. They played who was on their schedule, and they beat them. They beat them down. And there was one point where I used to get pissed off at Belichick for running up the score, but then I finally came around to the point that this is the National Football League. This is the highest level of competition in football. You beat them down. You beat them down. Make them. If they want to stop you, make them stop you.
Yeah, when your coaches are making millions of dollars and your players are too, there is no running up the score. In college, I think there's some D-hole kind of maneuvers that you can do when you're Michigan playing against Eastern, Southern, Western, around the bout, Arkansas State, whatever it is. That's a whole different thing. But when you're in the NFL and they want to work out some younger players and you're losing by 40 points, then you shouldn't have your job. I think that's a whole different thing. So speaking about that team, Mr. Hirsch, what do you see so far? I think that the three of us have all agreed that while there is some validity to this year's offseason, noise about trainers and all this stuff with New England, we all talked about on air and off that once it came time to football, I think that the Patriot stuff's going to just quiet down. They're just going to start playing football, and you'll notice in the news cycle it's happened again.
Yeah, they're now billing that as fake news.
I hate that term, but it kind of was.
Well, it either was or it wasn't, and I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. And the fact of the matter is that this is the kind of stuff that people talk about during the off season because there's nothing else to talk about. Yep. And any little thing comes under the microscope and, there's none of it really matters. What matters is what happens when the season starts. And by the way, today was the first day that the Packers were on the field at training camp. And you know, this is where it starts. Yeah, yeah. It was
You guys are late. We've been out there. We've been out there for over a week now.
well, you
Well,
guys, you guys
got
need
the
to
early, yeah, the
practice.
early. No, you guys were
Good
granted
one.
the early start. You guys and that other team, I forget who it was. I think it's the Bears. Were granted the early start for some reason. I don't understand why.
It's the
So
Hall of Fame thing.
you know,
Yeah.
then what with the you know, with the Patriots, one of the comments was made that I don't think they would have as many rings. And I think the Patriots have really played well over the course of time in that final game, the Super Bowl. But where I think they would have had problems if they were in some NFC division, one of the tougher divisions, is getting to the final game. I think that's where it would have made the difference. It's not to me, it's not about what might have happened when they, if they were in the NFC North and they end up in the Super Bowl, I think they would play just as good as if they were in the AFC East and they end up in the Super Bowl. I think the problem that would have cut down on their rings would be that other teams would have ended up getting into the playoffs. Other teams would have ended up getting the first round buys.
Good point. Good
You know,
point.
I want to real quick, Blaine, before you jump in. I want to say that something to think about, and it says affect Mr. Hirsch's team as well. Is sometimes I think that maybe on certain rosters, a suspension might not be the worst thing in the world. I think that maybe letting a couple of guys take some hits and getting chemistry. You know, I mentioned Jordan Matthews earlier with the Patriots might be a good thing. Just like I think, the Packers' best running back being suspended for the first two games and letting the more fragile guys, take some hits in the first two games might end up working out well for you guys. I don't think that they're going to miss a beat with Edelman. So if you want to give your thought on what's going on with the Pats this year, and if you want to also weigh in on the Edelman suspension, I think we'd love to hear both from you, Mr. Baltimore Blaine.
Yeah, well, Edelman suspension. He lost his appeal, and he's going to be suspended for the first four games, and that'll bring him back into on week 5 against Indy when they host Indy in New England in Foxborough. But in the meantime, you got Kenny Britt, who they're very high on. He's been put on the PUP list because he tweaked his hamstring, but that's not expected to be for very long. He's on the active PUP list. The receiver that seems to be on the outs is Malcolm Mitchell, who they're looking at. This is according to Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. They're looking to moving him because of he's his knees, man. He's had knee histories since back in college. Couldn't get on the field last year. Lost his season last year because of his knee, and just went through another procedure, not a surgery, but a procedure. According to Ian Rappaport, to help facilitate the healing process. But the thing is that it looks like the Patriots, according to Rappaport, they're done with them. They want to cut ties, and he may even get an injury settlement in the next few weeks. But Rob Gronkowski is going to be probably taking the bulk of Edelman's or picking up Edelman's slack, or filling in, catching those passes that Edelman would probably get. And in other words, his workload will increase while Edelman's out.
Jordan Matthews, folks. For those of you who play fantasy, and a great fantasy deal for someone like Mr. Hirsch, it was called Best Ball, where you draft a team, and then you let it go. And what that means is that you play 3 quarterbacks, 3 receivers, whatever you draft, and you don't have to move your lineup around. It just puts together your best lineup every week. You just kind of you pay and you play, and then you let it go. Jordan Matthews is going to be one of the best plays. Is going to be at the end of purchasing trust you me, Jordan Matthews is a total Belichick reclamation project.
Well, they added. What did they add? Actually, they didn't add much. They didn't have to. I mean, they added Adrian Claiborne deal. He was with the Falcons last year.
Well, they added they went
win.
to the first round to get a running back, which is the most they've spent up on in a
Sony.
while. Which, yeah. So why don't we talk about that? We'll go to you real quick, Mr. Baltimore Blaine, and then to Mr. Hirsch, and we'll close it up. But what does it say to you? I mean, it tells me that Gillislee's out. Besides that, the fact that the Patriots have basically made a living off of a variety of backs that were lower draft picks or free agents, and they decided that this guy was, in Belichick's eyes, good enough to go after at the very top of the draft. I mean, what does that say to you?
That says that he's going to be starting. They also added Jeremy Hill as a piece too on a 1-year deal. Give him a little bit of a chance of rebounding his career. But I think you're right. I think it's I know you're right. Sony's going to be starting. That's going to be the starter. Gillislee is probably gone. We'll see how the camp works out for him. But that was a surprise to me too in that draft that they went that high on a running back. So that is, that's all I gotta say about it.
Well, I know that I said earlier that I thought all of the teams in the division had gotten better, except for the Bills. And in terms of the Patriots, I say that with a question mark. Because I think that the Patriots are on the downward path. I think they're declining in strength and potential and opportunity. I think they're still going to be hanging around in the playoffs because of their easy schedule being in the AFC East. But so I'm going to put a question mark after that. And aside from that, I can't argue with either you, Chris, or Blaine about what it means when somebody grabs a player in the first round. Obviously, they intend to use them. So I'm not going to question that.
Yeah, a good point, Mr. Hirsch. I would also add that they're getting older as far as the key positions. You got a Brady near the end. Belichick, how long is he going to stay? Once Brady decides to go. And believe me, I all this fake news, so-called fake news, I still smell smoke. And as long as I smell smoke, I'm going to be looking for the fire. And I think there's a fire burning in that locker room, in that organization. And
what I can tell you is, from my experience, by living through the Brett Favre days, is Tom Brady Brady's going to be fantastic until he's not. And I mean, that sounds like common sense, but it all of a sudden shows up. The old gray mare just ain't what she used to be.
And I do want to give Mr. Hirsch credit on the fact that we make jokes about it, like some very sharp people on the show, like against my Seahawks or against other people, like you can't keep making a call, or like Hirsch tells me about the Chargers winning. You can't keep making a call and then be like, "Hey, I called it." The fourth or fifth year into the call. And I think what Mr. Hirsch just did was he made a tentative call to attention as to the decline of the Patriots, but using facts as opposed to this has to be the year, because you know what? I've been saying it. They're going to crash. Tom Brady's too successful. His wife's too pretty. He's got to go down. No, what he's saying is he's using the fact that there's new players coming on, the aging of some of the stars, the fact that the offseason has showed a bunch of stories that we don't normally see with the Patriots. So I want to give him credit on the fact that he didn't call the Patriots decline like one of those loud talking heads, East Coast radio guys. He said, this year seems to me to be a little bit different, and I'm seeing some things that could lead me to believe that this could be a down turn, and this is why. So I think that's something that should be acknowledged as opposed to just throwing out hot takes that hopefully stick this year or in 5 years.
I want to point out also that Mr. Hirsch and I both, we remember last year when we were breaking this division down, we had Arnie on.
You too, Blaine. You too.
Pat. No, we had Arnie on as a guest, Patriots fan, and this is when Tom Brady was talking about being Superman and playing for God knows some ridiculous amount of more years. And the last thing I said to he and his wife as our guests was, Father Time is undefeated. And now we hear a different story coming from Brady about retirement might be coming a lot sooner than later. And we both acknowledged or observed last year a decline, what we saw as declining, Tom Brady declining. So it's not. It wouldn't surprise me that after this season, I say another season or so, it's done. It's done. It's done there.
Well, yeah, but he didn't fall off the cliff yet, and that's
Not
what
yet.
happens when you stay in too long. So
Not yet, but we saw it with Manning.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to be next season, but I agree with you that he wasn't as sharp as he was. I mean, last season he wasn't as sharp as he was the season before.
Right.
That comeback against the Falcons was phenomenal, and he had an opportunity to do it again against the Eagles, but it didn't come off. So, he may be losing a step. One thing I'll say about Tom Brady, his wife is always going to be beautiful.
Way to throw that in. And one thing I'll say about that is I think that comeback was more about the Falcons losing their wind and coaching and not taking time out than it was about anything else. But I will say that I don't think that any of us are willing to put 100% on this year, much less I want to say procrastinate, but prognosticate. Prognosticate, that's the word, right?
That's
prognosticate
it.
The 2 or 3 years in the future, or the career of someone like a competitive animal like Tom Brady. So this is a shorter show, folks.
Chris.
Well, just one more thing.
Yeah, that's Blaine's line, right?
Yeah, about that Falcons game, I agree with you that the Falcons, with better coaching, could have won that game, but I can't deny that when they were under the gun and way behind, that the Patriots put up a lot of points in that fourth quarter. And that's what I'm talking about.
Well, whether they're on or not, one of the things about football is that it really is any given Sunday. And the fact that Belichick, and it's something that all of us need to look at, is Belichick can take waves of players and keep winning. I think that he is at the top of his game as far as American sports coaches are concerned. Blaine?
I will say I will say, Chris, that I will do everything that I just said about Brady and the Patriots declining. I will say it, but I will not put my money on it.
Yeah, there you go. That's the reality of it, and that's what makes them different, right? Like that's the kind of thing. I think that Belichick and Popovich.
Still wish they were in the North, though. Still wish they were in the AFC North. Beat up on them a couple of times a year.
Yeah, but it's like I wish candy canes tasted like bubblegum. It is what it is, and we have to fight it out. But at the same time, I don't think that any other. How about this? For those few Patriot fans that are listening, as much as we talk about the fact that they were in the weakest division, I can't think of a team that could have taken the last, 16 years? 16 years. And just completely dominated in the AFC East like the Patriots did. I can't think of a single team that could have done that with the team that they've put out there.
Well, the only reason Blaine wants the Patriots in the AFC North is
so you can hit Brady twice a year.
No, it's because then the Ravens could be in the AFC East.
No, no, no. I want the Ravens.
Oh,
No. I want them in the
that's
division
a
with the
lawyer
Ravens.
trickery right there.
I want them in a division with the Ravens and the Steelers, where they had to play the Ravens and the Steelers twice a year,
See, that's
and the
called,
Bengals.
see, that's called well thought out, backhanded compliment.
I know
And
that. I'm gonna get you back, Mr. Hirsch.
no, they said no. They should be in that division, but that would mean that legally, because of the fact that we have to have the same amount of teams, that your team would be out. So yeah, there you go, Ravens fans. And just so you guys know, I did send Blaine something about how my Seahawks and their analytics, who I've been very proud of, really missed on Alex Collins and letting him go to our Baltimore Blaine's Ravens. You can find that on our Twitter page at Nuckpods, KNUCKPODS, excuse me. And that's the same for our Facebook page. Next week, we will get back to our full hour and a half, and we will start with divisions that matter. And we will run that straight into the regular season. And our Pick'em show will be on our Knucklehead Podcast Network on Fridays. And this year, I have a full-on website set up to take our picks into account, and we're going to have a few other people on the network participating, so we can show you just how much better we are than them. Hopefully. All right, folks. We will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for your time.
So next week we're going to come with the NFC East, correct?
The NFC East, yes, and it's going to be it's one of the more hotter and more contested network. Divisions, and we're going to be joined by host, stand-up comedian, and newly coined producer and director VJ Vernon is going to be on to tell us about the Cowboys, the Giants, and he and I are going to spark up an old feud about the Cowboys, and I think we're both going to agree on the Giants and the Eagles. And we're going to get all five of us are going to just jump on.
Well,
about the Redskins.
The teaser from me is, aside from the Eagles, what is actually going on in the NFC East? Is there anybody that's any good?
Yeah, and that's a division that could be 3 teams or just one. It's all 3 are possible. So let's talk about that. You know, one of my favorite offensive coordinators, who was on the Vikings last year, is now with the Giants, and he has what a lot of people are calling a once-in-a-generation talent at running back. So let's see.
Well, maybe we can all, maybe with all of us involved, we can finally find out what happened to Dez Bryant.
Dez Bryant is still out there. And by the way, Odell Beckham has decided that he is going to show up for the entire camp, and he's going to let his manager and the team figure out the financials, but he wants to be with his teammates, which is pretty good. And very quickly, for any one of us who's ever been around or in or had anything to do with people in recovery, Josh Gordon has gone kind of missing. Hopefully it's just a contract issue, but the details around it are kind of foggy, so I hope it's just about money, and I want to say nothing but love and just I hope that kid has got it together and we don't get some bad news coming out soon as to where he's at. So for Mr. Hirsch and Baltimore Blaine, next week we'll start our regular season full-time awesomeness. Talk to you guys soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Go ahead, Blaine. Say it.